Hey, yo, what's good, everyone? Twisted here with Open Sorcery, and today I am joined once again by my lovely co-host Devi here. And the topic that we're going to go ahead and tackle, which in regards to the time this is recorded and released, will be a couple weeks prior to 2024's total solar eclipse over the continental United States. And with that, this event, you know, at least since the 2017 solar eclipse, has gone ahead and had a lot of intrigue from people. A lot of what this seems interesting, and all of that. The fact that we're having two whole solar eclipses across the continent of the U.S. across North America in such a short span of time that many people have different ideas and speculations as to what the significance of this could be and all of that in the grander scheme of things. Well, in taking on some of that interest ourselves, pretty much, Debbie and I were thinking might as well get into the ideas of what exactly this particular event happens to involve within it, as well as what different cultures around the world say about solar eclipses in general and all of that. So, initially, just when you think of solar eclipses and this one in particular, what comes to mind, Debbie?
So, honestly, the way that I would like to do this is I would like to go over historical feelings about it, and then I would like to save my own the thoughts, feelings, and everything towards the end, if that's okay with you.
Okay, that is perfectly fine. But before we get into historical stuff, let me just go ahead and talk about the specific sort of solar eclipse in of itself. So just to go ahead and give some of the general talking points that if you have been discussing it, seeing discussions about it around the internet, or talking to people you know about it, and all sort of thing, you may have picked up on, whether it be just in regular conversation or on conspiracy forums, blogs, or anything of a astronomical, astrological sort talking about this, but the particular things of intrigue, the points of intrigue that are surrounding this particular eclipse is that in relation to 2017 solar eclipse, whose pathway went through the continental U.S.'s, overall, right, in North America, this eclipse, it does the same, but it has a opposite diagonal route. So it's crossing over the middle of the country to form like an X shape, right? You can say in a sense like X marks the spot, like, a pirate going ahead and trying to find some treasure. Ah, matey, I'm trying to find some booty and all of that,
Jeez.
in my very crappy pirate impersonation.
All I can think
But
is, the treasure is a strip club. Like we'll find it there.
oh
Jeez,
yes, well,
Louise.
I wouldn't be surprised in terms of that area having a strip club of some sort. But in any case, excuse me, the intersecting area where both of these, pathways meet encompasses much of South Illinois, and this region is happened to be named Little Egypt. And there's a particular small town called Makanda within it, which is specifically dubbed the Star of Egypt. Now, Debbie and I both happen to have a couple friends who recently moved to Makanda, and we're not going to go ahead and say their names because they have not been featured on a program before and are given their consent in doing so. But in both shout out to both of them. You know who you are. And in regards to this, and their insights and things that they went ahead and experienced on a trip there and stated about town, which drew them to it. This area is known for having a strong Freemasonic influence and also a rather welcoming community that the generalized term of hippies would probably apply to categorize the folks there and all that sort of thing. Um, so in relation to that, right? What do you think about this particular like crossing point, this pathway, which is a lot of Southern Illinois, not completely that, but this is kind of like where the next point of said pathways are.
No, with that, the funny part about it is that while the one that went north to south the last time, right? This
Well, they're
one's
both going north to south, but like it's kind of like opposite. So it's kind of like this time it's east to west, but
well,
and yeah.
no, because this one's traveling south to north. Like,
Oh, it is.
yeah, it
Oh,
is.
okay.
It's traveling south
My
to north.
mistake.
All good. Um, but it's that's why it's making the X.
Oh, okay.
But with that, it highlights the area. The area is, from what I have seen in the pictures that we've been shown, the area is magical as it is. And so that's kind of like one of those, I would almost say like a vortex point, in my opinion. But the path of totality on this one, following a, what was it, the New Madrid fault line, is the part that I'm just like, ooh, holy crap. Like, I have feelings about it.
Oh, yes. Well, to go ahead and put a little more plainly and kind of go ahead and generalize and more so that when it comes to scientists and many different folk that speculate about if there's going to be any sort of major sort of like earthquakes or eruptions of different volcanoes and stuff, or any sort of large events that have been predicted based on particular tectonic models and measurements and all of that. New Madrid fault line, which is a large, tectonic, where tectonic plates go ahead and shift at, right? This is where, you know, um, this is where it happens to be, is along the path to totality, what have you. And of course, if you do not necessarily know anything about plate tectonics, then I would say you may want to go back to earth science from a middle school and high school to go ahead and learn a bit more about that specifically. Um, but yeah, so all in all, right, that is one particular crossing point, and what have you in this region, and the one that's been highlighted the most. But also, there's another intersecting point that in the state of Texas, there's a crossing where this year's eclipse intersects with the pathway for last year's annular solar eclipse, and you know the particular closest major city, which is outside of the totality and outside this like meeting place area, happens to be San Antonio. And but funny enough, one of the towns in this area happens to be called Utopia. So take with that as you potentially will for those looking for signs and for signifiers of oh yes, I think it's significance. But what say you about a manner of intersection in the state of Texas, particularly in the south of the state?
I mean, that in terms of in terms of historically what solar eclipses and like actual totality, not just like, oh hey, a partial, have signified
Yeah.
in history, it makes absolute sense. And I hate that it does because I live here. But it
Oh yes, you're
does.
going ahead and alluding to it and all of that. But so generally speaking, to say it plainly outright, what exactly before we get into specifics of what cultures go ahead and say that what exactly does a solar eclipse in totality happen to signify?
For a lot of cultures, it is separated into two categories, right? One of them is like death of an empire, uh, really bad omens, like some shit is going down. Pretty much, it is a signifier of you done fucked up. Um, and considering it's centering on Texas in one of the areas, I'm not surprised. I'm really not surprised. But like I said, the other side, because there's two of them, it is technically birth of a new era in that the sun and the moon are either reproducing or something of that nature.
Yes.
Um, but mostly all of it, and I would say this, like, take it with a grain of salt, because there's of course going to be outlier cultures, is going to be the end of something and the beginning of something new.
Yeah. So the snake eating its own tail.
Yep, we love our
Which
Ouroboros.
yes, yes. Which we'll get into in terms of that aspect or symbology in particular. But continuing on with how it goes ahead and relates to more so like what is happening on that day or what have you, right? But while not having intersecting paths to totality, another interesting area in the 2024, eclipses pathway is the regional west in New York, and I find it interesting because here, the founder of Mormonism, Joseph Smith, is said to have had prophetic visions, which were disclosed to him by Angel Moroni, which includes, transcribing golden tablets and formulating the core Mormon text of lore known as the Book of Mormon and all that sort of thing. And which includes, different areas that are important to Mormonism, such as, Palmyra, what have you, named after I believe it is a Greek area. I may be incorrect or what have you, but also uh, a area called Cumorah or a hill named Cumorah, where these events are said to have taken place back in the 1800s and so. But yes, so lo and behold, I find that particularly interesting that this is also within this year's eclipse's totality. What say you about that?
I mean, in context of the omens that eclipses bring, it's when we are having the fall of any birthplace, it's a cycle that's done. It's finished. Um, so, in my opinion, and this is purely my opinion, um, I would say that a reign of Latter Day Saints, in a sense, is finished.
Well, I don't necessarily know if they had any particular reign. I know that at least when it comes to, the growth of their religion, that they jumped up to. I'm crudely putting this. I do not have statistics in front of me, um, but they pretty much went ahead and jumped up to one of the top five fastest growing religions or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I may be incorrect on that figure, but it's been a while since I looked into that statistic. But yes, they have seen a particular manner of growth over within the 21st century, and since its inception, in comparison to other particular religions and such. Um, and truth be told, I'm not going to say this particular era of Mormonism. You can say what have you, whether you want to see it as a subsection of Christianity or something independent. But um, yeah, I will say that while Western New York, and this being an area of significance for them as well as for other many different things, but you know, they're centered in Utah now. So
Mm-hmm.
in terms of that, then I think they aren't necessarily like in that particular pathway of harm that potentially a
No.
solar eclipse could bring, as we generally have discussed thus far.
Mm-hmm. No, but considering that's the birthplace, like, it doesn't matter how far you go, you're always going to have some kind of tie to your birthplace, correct?
Oh yeah,
So, in that, it is more of a. Let me go off on a tiny little tangent here.
go ahead.
This is a age of disclosure. Yes, this is a age of things coming to light, bullshit being dispelled, people being informed. That is where I believe this is more of exposure of that. You cannot hide it any longer, because it doesn't matter what religion it is, there are always going to be dark secrets, right? Doesn't matter.
Yes.
In the convergence of belief and the power of men, there is always going to be corruption. Um,
Oh yes.
but in that, there is a lot of things that we are probably not even aware of in terms of how they got their beginnings in this path of totality. that are going to be coming to an end. But I do find it significant that it's highlighting these areas. Is really highlighting these areas. So for that, I think it's more of this is your death knell
Yeah,
because the truth is coming out.
yeah. And in that sort of sense, we'll see what occurs with that particular belief system of Mormonism and all that. But you know, keeping on with, I guess you can say, current events that will be ongoing at the time of the eclipse, I'll go ahead and speak about different major sporting events for the U.S. And the first one I'm going to go ahead and state is that the college basketball championship, the NCAA championship, which concludes March Madness, that will be occurring on April 8th itself. Scheduled to occur after the the totality of the solar eclipse, but still being held on that day. Also, in regards to the entire weekend leading up to, and even on the day of the solar eclipse is for those who are interested or have been interested at one time in professional wrestling and all that, whether you see it as fake or more so of a male soap opera or a stage play with athleticism or whatever you want to go ahead and categorize it at. This entire weekend will be featuring, on Friday, April 5th, they'll be having their weekly program, Friday Night SmackDown. On the Saturday and Sunday will be their biggest event of the year of WrestleMania, in particular WrestleMania 40. So in Roman numerals XL, and as they're dubbing it the biggest WrestleMania of all time and all sort of thing, which obviously sporting events want to go ahead and pump themselves up and do promo and all sort of thing, regardless. But there's that, and also on the day of the solar eclipse itself, there's Monday Night Raw and what have you. And, whatever the happening to be of the events that transpire in relation to this will happen in terms of, oh, yes, who wins what matches and all sort of thing. As someone who, has kind of been, was a fan of professional wrestling when I was younger, and, as of recently beginning more so into it due to the intrigue and the hype of it, I will say that during this weekend in of itself, I have been given the notion, the inclination of an intuitive nature, not to witness or partake of it whatsoever. And that having been said, I think it's probably safe to say afterwards, if you have a DVR or you go ahead and rewatch it, on their streaming services through Peacock or anything like that, you can go ahead and watch it for yourself. But the initial, like, sort of like live events themselves during this time, don't necessarily partake in it or watch it. You can hear about it if you wish to, and obviously with that comes spoilers if you're interested in actually seeing for yourself what occurs. But yes, so that is my advisement in relation to that has been given unto me from, you can say, spirit or different forces and all of that. But what say you about different major sporting events, different occurrences slated for this period of time?
All right. So, shall we put on the tinfoil hat for this little bit? So, there are a
I
lot
think
of
that's been going on throughout the whole sort of thing. And when it comes to a lot of speculation, it's pretty much tinfoil hat talk. So I
I
think we
mean,
already have those on.
I'm
Yes.
just honoring my tinfoil hat. It's
Yes.
shaped like a boat. Um,
Yes.
but with events that are leading up to this, um, and I do feel it in my bones. This is less of a like, oh, conspiracy, like I'm just pulling this out of my ass. Like this is more so I feel this. I feel this
Yes.
deeply. I'm an intuitive. I am a psychic. That's what I do. That's how I live. That's what I am. This feels like a attention and energy draw. Like they are
Oh yes.
filling a battery in a sense.
Oh yes.
And using the attention and excitement of the people who are participating as an energy source. And I don't like it. I definitely do not like it. In fact, I will say I have been given the inclination to not watch the eclipse at all, which I was pissed about. I was pissed
Yes.
off because I am very much like a, this is so cool. I'm in the path of totality. I want to go see it. Like, I'm so excited. Like,
Yes.
take my kids out, like drag them out of school for the day because that's exciting. But everything has been telling me, do not participate. Stay inside the house. This is energy that you do not want. And I hate that. I really hate that. And I'm really like, I'm pissed. I am pissed off. And
Yeah.
Spirit knows it. I know it. Now you know it. Like, but I would say to anybody that is spiritually inclined, don't watch this.
Or
Do
even
not
if you don't
participate.
consider yourself spiritually inclined, yeah. Yeah.
There is something here that feels wrong and it feels really bad. And I don't necessarily have the verbiage and the words to articulate the feeling in totality, but don't participate. Um if you choose not to. Like obviously make the choice yourself, do what you're going to do, but for my own feelings about it and how all of this is playing out, count me out. I have not bought the ticket. I'm getting a refund. I was excited, but now I am not.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to talk about
No.
the history first. Dang it!
Well,
But
hey, look, hey, look, live particular sort of thing, and you mentioning this, it'll be a good segue point to get into that, right?
mm-hmm,
Of what you're like, I guess you can say supporting sorts of like cultural statements and myths and what have you in relation to eclipses. But I will say in regards to not just WrestleMania or the NCAA championship, but if you just want to talk about energy and attention and all that, that's what all major sporting events do, right?
mm-hmm,
For better or for worse. Whether you want to say that's benign or it is a positive thing or a neutral or a negative thing, that is just part of what you're signing up for by paying your attention to it and or attending these sorts of events in mass, right?
mm-hmm,
And lo and behold, right, like say the Super Bowl or say the World Series for baseball and other sorts of North American sports, like the NBA championship or what have you, right? You're going ahead and partaking in these sorts of things, and it draws your attention, your energy that could potentially be spent elsewhere. So it's all about what you find enjoyment in and or worth or value in, and whether
mm-hmm,
you see it as once again a positive, a neutral, or a negative thing overall. But going ahead
mm-hmm.
and transitioning a bit more so to what it is that you were discussing of like, okay, so bad omens and vibes and juju and all that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. I did want to go ahead and cover something in particular about how uh, there was this one article from NPR that I can go ahead and link in the description after we go ahead and have this you know conversation done and putting it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular article with NPR, they were talking about last year's annular solar eclipse. And that happened to be encompassing an area in the US known as the Ring of Fire. And regarding this, there was an interview that was conducted with Navajo Native Americans in the area to get an understanding of how they wouldn't directly observe the eclipse, but they'd honor and respect that that's occurring. So I'm going to go ahead and read an excerpt from the article in of itself and what have you, just a short several paragraphs. So in this it states, Samara Crank is a Navajo member and The Visit with Respect program director with the Bears Ears Partnership in Bluff, Utah. She told NPR's Morning Edition that Saturday's eclipse would be a significant event for her tribe. The eclipse is considered a celestial phenomenon. I was taught to be respectful of the eclipse, Clark said, meaning that I was supposed to stay indoors. I couldn't eat or drink. There's no sleeping, and I'm not supposed to look at any kind of reflection or a shadow of the eclipse just because that goes back to our cultural origin stories. A solar eclipse is a new beginning in Navajo culture. The Navajo word for the eclipse is, and I'm not going to say it because I'll mispronounce it. I'm going to butcher it. I'm not going to attempt it, but I will go ahead and say that it means the death of the sun, according to Navajo historian Wally Brown, which there's a link in the article to YouTube channel Navajo Traditional Teachings, I believe the name of the channel is. I can provide a link to the video itself, so you can go ahead and watch it, listen to it for your own sort of sake. What have you? It's something that not only myself but Lono here, fellow co-host on the channel, and others have gone ahead and listened to and watched before in trying to acquaint ourselves with different Native American sorts of teachings and ideas, beliefs, and all of that. And also, I believe you also have listened to it as well, Devi, in terms of Wally Brown himself.
I
But
believe so,
by
yes.
all means, right? Uh, Piggybacking off of what you stated before and this, by all means, go ahead.
I mean, I agree. And it feels correct if we're going to go into that. But in terms of a lot of other cultures, there's a couple of different ways that they deal with it. So there are several cultures that believe that an animal is eating the sun, which is kind of hilarious if you think about it. But Norse
In
mythology,
particular, a lot of times it happens to be reptilian nature, so snake and or dragon.
snake,
Sometimes a
dragon,
toad, I believe.
a frog in Vietnam, yeah.
Which,
But there's
yeah,
also several of them that believe wolves are eating the sun, like in Norse mythology. But there was also, I'm trying to remember where it was, but there was one where they believe like a pack of dogs were eating the sun. I can't find that one at the moment, but there was a couple of different ways that they dealt with it. Some of them actually came out screaming and shouting and banging pots and pans and making as much noise as possible to get this shit off of the sun, which is hilarious to me. Some of them, like in Hindu beliefs, they actually believe that Rahu's head, was eating the sun, but because Rahu is decapitated, um, it literally just it falls out of his neck because he has no body. Well, he does have a body, but it is separate from the head. But they will, I believe, submerge themselves up to their necks in the water, um, asking for the sun back. So that was very interesting to see. Um, you know what? I might have combined two of them on there,
yes.
which is possible. That's very possible because I was reading quite a bit about it. It kind of mashed up in my brain, but I found that very interesting. Um, but there were people that are really sheltering. They are staying away from it. They are hiding from it. They are begging the gods or spirits to protect the sun, or they are begging the sun and the moon for assistance and like kill the dragon, help us, kill the dragon, bring the sun back. Which is kind of funny because the sun is the thing that's being attacked supposedly. But I
Yes.
digress. Or,
Oh, yes.
like I said, on the other side, there is the romantic, where the sun and the moon are married, and that is their joining, and they turn out the light because bow chicka wow wow. Um,
Yes.
so it's
Celestial bodies boning.
yes, celestial boners. Yep. Um, but here's another one that feels very correct, and I can't exactly tell you why. because it's one of those intuitional things of yes, just yes. And I think maybe it has to do with, well, you know what? We'll just get into it. So there is a belief. So in the fasting, right? How we were talking about she was Navajo, correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Where they were fasting, they were not eating or drinking anything. There is a lot of beliefs that anything that is pre prepared before the eclipse has poison on it. It turns into poison. Like the sides of the wells turn to poison. You don't have any utensils or cups out because any moisture or dew or anything, like it's toxic. And so you wash it and then you can prepare it anything after the eclipse, but you do not eat anything that is pre prepared. And I
Yeah.
think that can kind of go into like some of the, I think, Fae mythologies, right? Whenever you go into a Fae world, what do you not do? You don't eat anything, right? Because you don't, if you eat something from that world, you stay in that world. And this may be my brain putting two and two together and putting a puzzle piece together, but if you eat something that was of the last one, the cycle that we ended, the old world before the eclipse, then you stay in that old world and you don't move forward into the next one. So
Yeah.
while that sounds, it can sound kind of silly, it feels absolutely correct. Um, so I know I'm going to be fasting for myself, but do as you wish.
Oh, yes. Well, two things to say in regards to all that you just covered in that long, particular like array of statements. So the first one, in terms of Rahu, I believe right here it states that Rahu is known as the dragon's head, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
To go back to the whole, dragon eating the sun sort of interpretation of the eclipse and what have you in that sort of interpretation. As far as I am aware, goes back pretty much to the dawn of, civilization and all of that. Back when religions were officially being formed and there was more so of a power base coming together within the different sort of wherever it was going ahead and occurring, whether you want to say it's in Mesopotamia and or other regions in the world. As far as I can remember, in a general sense, I remember hearing when I was younger about the idea that the Brotherhood of the Snake went ahead and used the event of the eclipse and them having foreknowledge of it to go ahead and make people more so subservient and more so put them up on more so a pedestal as the priestly class. I do not remember exactly which particular culture that belongs to, and all of that. This is me more so pulling something off the top of my dome from a while back when I was just learning and studying about a vast array of different things when it comes to religions and mythology and conspiracy theories and all that sort of thing intertwined and intertangled.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I want to go ahead and state is that um, when it comes to things going ahead and being exposed, right? That's pretty much like you go ahead and as you're saying, things being contaminated, what have you. So make sure that your windows are closed, that you put up blinds on your windows if you are in fact observing and taking heed in the traditions of not just Native Americans but others, what have you. And that's I believe it was stated at some point in our pre recorded conversation discussion that people would go ahead and like turn over their silverware or turn over their plates and all that, so there isn't necessarily
Yes.
exposure on the eating side. If you have it out right and it is going ahead and catching some of that eclipse sunlight, or potentially being outside or whatever the case may be. But yes, going ahead and denying exposure to the outside whether it be lights that are still coming from the eclipse itself, and or the uh, the moisture in the air if you have windows and or doors open and such.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I had stated that. I had stated that during our recorded conversation, not necessarily to the full extent, but
Yes.
yes. So yeah, there is mixed messages in mythos, but for the most part, it is seen as a negative. It is seen as a negative. There was one more, and I just thought of it. Um, I remember reading it.
Yes. As you're going ahead and typing away to go ahead and try to find it.
I
Yes.
am it. If I remember correctly, it was that the eclipse where you have the ring of fire was seen as, I've already said like the fall of an empire, but specifically like the fall of a king, like the death of a king.
Yes.
Um oh goodness. Well, of course, everything would be hard to find.
Well, not necessarily, of course, but just more so one of those things of, preparation before going ahead and pressing the record button. But in
Well,
any case,
oh, thanks. Thanks
well,
a
hey,
lot.
look, if
No.
people are interested in looking more so into that, going off of your lead, your general sort of lead, they can go find it for themselves. You
True
know?
enough. True enough.
Yeah.
It is more so I remember reading about it, but this was like a long time ago and it
Yes.
just came back into uh my periphery
Yeah.
of memory. So it's just like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that." Um
Yes.
but we can move on to the next topic.
Oh, yes. Now, in terms of astrological events occurring, right? Astronomical events, during the eclipse, there seems to be, at least by science, going ahead and scientific models predicting this, that there will be a comet dubbed the Devil's Comet that will be able to be seen during the solar eclipse that is upcoming, what have you. And, I just find that funny that such is the case. But you know, what say you about that sort of occurrence? And if you want to delve a little more so into it, or not.
Yeah. So the fact that this thing is going to be passing by Jupiter. So Jupiter is seen as the king of the gods, right? This is the devil's
Yes,
comet over
at
Jupiter.
least in Greco-Roman sort of
Yeah.
mythology.
Well,
Yes,
I mean, like if we're looking at it in terms of Greco-Roman mythologies, and I mean that's what our planets are named after.
yes,
But that to me is significant. Um in a omen of death, a omen of ill will, a omen of negativity is on the king's head. And I mean the eclipse is already a a negative omen in and of itself. So I'm just like, ooh, ooh, vive la revolution. Just god damn. Just the sky is
yes,
saying yes, it's time.
yes. So pretty much in short, if shit happens to hit the fan in different capacities, then there is a sort of celestial sign that go ahead and precludes it, if such is the case. However probable or improbable or whatever that it may be, and or the general assessment of the listener is.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the
Yes.
thing with these omens. These are more so omens of a broad nature, and that's, I think that's what people have to realize in terms of any kind of astrology, is that yes, these things can mean that you're potentially in for a bad day, but these are going to be more of a broader context than an individual context. The only reason why a king would have a problem or anything of that nature, why a leader would have a problem with it, is because he's leading an entire country, right? So that is a
Oh
broad
yeah.
context. That is a center point for a broad context. That is why that might affect them specifically, right? It may
Yes.
affect a country as a whole, but not necessarily an individual. Does that make sense?
Oh yes. Yes. Um. Now, in regards to that sort of thing, of a person going ahead and like signifying, a country or being the figurehead and being affected by this, yeah, I can go ahead and see that because, obviously we go ahead and coordinate, which the etymology of, coronation comes from corona. And aside from a particular sort of pandemic that, the world had to deal with, a few years ago, that the word corona happens to be related to the sun in of itself. That is a solar term,
Mm-hmm.
what have you. So the a king pretty much going ahead and being coronated. They're going ahead and with a lot of manners of sun worship across different religions and what have you, and just in general practices, um, that the king is pretty much the sun here on earth or a representative of the sun or the gods or the people, right? In
Mm-hmm.
leadership, in that sort of divine guidance, what have you, going ahead and putting meaning from on high and onto the earthly realm, what have you. Whether it's you say Egyptian cultures or Greco-Roman or you know what, not just Western but Eastern as well. Whether you want to say
Mm-hmm.
it's in Japan, obviously that's the land of the rising sun, and so on and so forth. But to digress from going into more so of a detour, yes, um, I can definitely see that as potentially being the case, what have you. But alas, continuing onward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've gone ahead and covered, like, okay, so what is it that intrigues people about this particular solar eclipse and what it may indicate in affected regions of the path totality that, are noted as significant. Went ahead and gone ahead and talked about the general sort of like stigma that happens to be the case for solar eclipses and all of that, and what several traditions indicate and or an advisement of what you could potentially do in relation to said traditions, what have you. Now, I did want to go ahead and talk a little more so about fictional sort of representations of the solar eclipse that you can go ahead and enjoy yourself if it tickles your fancy and what have you in a variety of different genres. So, and also visual mediums, I guess you can say, it's all video, but once again different genres. So the first one I want to go ahead and talk about for all the fans of good old manga and anime, there's this one series, if you have not heard of it, called Berserk, which is one of my favorites in terms of not only series but films that I've seen in terms of film trilogies that document this particular sort of event, right? And so it's a manga and anime series penned by Kentaro Miura, who is not necessarily amongst the living anymore. Also, I'm going to take a moment as an aside. Uh, R.I.P. the good old Akira Toriyama, who made Dragon Ball Z, and not just Dragon Ball Z, but the original Dragon Ball, GT, Super, all of that, because that was one of the building blocks of not just in terms of anime, but just in terms of entertainment for me when I was younger, and all of that. I'm sure for many other people out there. But yeah. So in any case, Kentaro Miura also happened to go ahead and pass, a couple years ago, and in terms of the anime, right? One of the biggest events, if not the biggest event in the series, features a solar eclipse, right? And in this scene, you know, the surrounding area becomes engulfed in the totality of said eclipse, and it becomes a literal hellscape, with, any sort of regular parts of the landscape going ahead and being transformed into hills of like faces appearing and then there's even a large hand rising from the ground, what have you. You can put it in a general sense without getting into the particular lore and terminology of it. And when it comes to, like, the transformation of the landscape, different beings and creatures happen to appear, including demons and angels, but they're more so of the evil angels, or you can say fallen angels in a sense. Um, but yes, so pretty much, uh, they go ahead and appear and are there to perform a ritual to have a man named Griffith in the series be able to ascend in a manner of apotheosis to becoming one of those evil angels known as the God Hand. Now, in order for him to go ahead and do this, uh, he has to go ahead and sacrifice his friends and his buddies, which are a band of mercenaries called the Band of the Hawk, right? And they have to be sacrificed to these demons, consume them, like have a large massacre occurring, right? So pretty much everybody there is exterminated, right? And used as uh you know energetic fuel for, I guess you can say, some sort of charging of this guy going ahead, ascending to being an evil angel. Only two of his friends, who are his closest, well, not necessarily friends based on how he uses them and thinks about them, but two of his officers in this mercenary group happen to survive. That is the main characters of Guts and Casca, and they happen to survive somehow, some way, which I'm not going to spoil. Go ahead and check it out for yourself. But lo and behold, they come out of it very traumatized and quite never the same as they were before. And both them and their world, they're changed after this. And prior to the event occurring, it was more or less like a standard sort of like medieval based, like fantasy, like, and like manga and anime, right? What have you, or at least this particular period of time in said manga and anime. But then after this event occurs, it pretty much turns all supernatural, dark fantasy. Like the veil is pretty thin between what is considered, you know, the regular mundane world and the spiritual world, what have you, and increasingly becomes thinner as the series goes along, what have you, in a rather apocalyptic and revelatory sort of manner. And with that, um, yeah, it's pretty much such a, like, significant event that serves the foundation for the rest of the series onward. I know that you have gone ahead and seen the trilogy because we were watching with a group of friends and what have you. But, well, what is it about Berserk that goes ahead and sticks out to you as a representation of potentially, not maybe not necessarily literally, but just figuratively, what we may go ahead and experience in regards to you know this eclipse, and or just as symbolically, right? And
Mm.
more so gradually, not necessarily like, oh, things are going to appear and everything is going to hit the fan, like, in a singular instant, but like as a turning point, a gradual sort of thing.
Yeah. So in terms of that, I think Berserk, like you covered all of it. Like you gave all of the spoilers. Stop that.
No, I didn't give all the
You
spoilers. Trust
did.
me, as a fan of Berserk, I know that I did not give all the spoilers. No.
You gave the spark notes. How about that? You gave the spark notes.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
there we go.
so with that, I think it's really just a emphasis on it's got a lot of bad energy. It's got a lot of negative energy. The Ring of Fire, while as a physical thing to watch, like, ooh, cool, that's awesome. There is something malevolent underneath it. There is something that is no bueno.
Okay, so just to clarify, in terms of the Ring of Fire, you're not referring to the region of the U.S. from 2023's eclipse. You're talking more so about when you look up into the sky at a
Yeah.
total eclipse, that there's a ring of fire that is surrounding the eclipse in of itself.
Yes, the totality, because the totality is going to produce a ring of fire. It is going to
Yes.
literally have that, which I want to experience, but I know I'm not supposed to. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's got a lot of bad juju. Just lots of bad energy. Do not like, do not touch. Just because something is awesome to look at, or it's mysterious, or you're curious about it, does not necessarily mean that it is something for you to go and experience and explore. There are some
Yes.
dangerous things out there. And truly, um, my belief is that those veils between planes of existence, those veils between worlds, they're already getting thinner and thinner. There is already. Mm, there is already a lot of breaches. I will put it that way.
Yes.
Um, and I feel that very strongly.
Oh yes. So if anything, this could be another just celestial event that's going ahead and marking, hey look, there is a increased amount of thinness between what is the tangible and the less tangible, as other events have gone ahead and done so. Like, granted, obviously, yearly, there is a Halloween, what have you, that is like marking out on a yearly sort of basis. But this being more so of a a a longer term sort of trend than just say like a several day period every year, what have you, and
Yeah.
no all that sort of thing. Yes. Now, in terms of other fictitious and modern sort of like video representations of eclipses, right, that you can go and enjoy for yourself and all of that. There's a series from back in 2006 to 2010. At least there was their original run, not necessarily linked to any side series or any sort of you know, um, sequels or anything like that. And it was called Heroes, and it ran on the major TV network of NBC. And the general gist of it is that there was an eclipse, right? And with that, many people across the world had not spiritual, but they had supernatural and superhero like powers to activate, which includes, one of the main characters named Claire Bennett going ahead and being able to have rapid cellular regeneration. So she'd be able to feel pain like the rest of us, but that would be very quickly curtailed and stopped and all that, and she'd be able to regenerate. So for those who are Marvel Comics fans, uh, pretty much what Wolverine is capable of doing, that level of regeneration and not being able to die and such. Um, or at least, to some extent, mimicking and likely inspired by that character. Another one is, since the series is called Heroes, funny enough, they made the character named Hero, likely intentionally, and pretty much he's a Asian dude from Japan who's able to go ahead and stop time and go ahead and manipulate it. And I believe potentially time travel, if I'm remembering correctly, because it's been a while since I've seen the series. At least by several minutes, what have you, um, and all of that. So pretty much going ahead and there's also several other characters that have more so conventional superhero powers like flying or super strength and all that sort of thing. But yes, so do you happen to remember the series at all? And if so, was there any takeaways that you have from said series?
So, like, I liked the series. I remember watching it, as a kid, because I was a kid when it was first coming out. And of course, I remember the line, "Save the cheerleaders, save the world."
Which I
And
believe that character hero went
yeah,
ahead and stated, yes.
and I remember laughing my ass off at that one. Um, but I don't I don't necessarily believe, like, oh, this is going to spark these supernatural powers in people. Not necessarily. I mean, are there people who can do things that are considered supernatural? Absolutely. But I think it's more natural than you think. Now, is it going to be like, we're going to shoot fire out of our eyeballs and, fucking Wingardium Leviosa, bitch. Like, no.
Yes, casting
Like,
fireballs and lightning bolts and all that out of your magical wand for those Harry Potter fans.
yeah, no, it's
Yes,
not. That is not the case. Can there be more of an awakening going on? Absolutely. And I think that's more of what it's alluding to in terms of there are things that are already inside of us, right? That lie dormant until there is an impetus for it to awaken. Like I will say, and I truly believe this, everybody has the capacity and the ability to be psychic. Everybody.
yes,
It is just harnessing what your natural talents are or connecting yourself to the divine, the oneness, the whole, and allowing that to flow through you in a sense.
yes.
So it's less everybody's going to be super special. It's more of we're recognizing that everybody is special, but we're all special a little bit differently, but we each fit together as a whole to make something happen.
Oh, yes. In our manner of postmodernism, right, and the way that the world is viewed through a secular lens, at least here in the West and, America, in terms of separating church and state, and or you can just say spiritual from the earthly, that, that is the interpretation, the sense that a lot of people go ahead and take nowadays of, oh, yeah, we have lost that sort of specialness, right, or we never had it at all. That there's no meaning. There's no sort of like beyond or what have you. At least that is what people who are atheists happen to believe, and who just don't have that sort of connection with the all, or at least they don't recognize it, right? And they're just going ahead and living more so of a earthly and, in my personal perspective, bland life. Um, and all that, which they can tap into it, whether they get the inclinations or the signs or the calling, you can say, or anything like that, or if they are just not necessarily haven't gotten that particularly yet, but maybe they are to get it at some point. Um, Technically, based on the idea of reincarnation, at least, right? That you have multiple lifetimes, across this earthly plane, other manners of existence. That maybe you are meant to go ahead and be more so having these sorts of experiences, and then there's people who are not necessarily meant to have it across these sorts of multiple experiences, or at least this particular experience that you're inhabiting now, whether you're listening to this conversation or whatever else you may be doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So lo and behold, I do agree that everyone has a potential, but what's the probability of said potential being realized based on the natural state of what you came to this world with, and or what you and of yourself go ahead and choose for yourself based on whatever sort of intuition or inclinations or what you've experienced or witnessed or anything like that? Because I definitely know my fair share of people who happen to have you know, stated that they've had different occurrences happen for them, but then they kind of like also went ahead and just like shrugged it off or tried to explain it away and
Mm-hmm.
all that. And to me, I'm like, I have not necessarily experienced exactly what you've experienced, but if there's something different about it, if there's a thing about it, you should roll with it. You should go ahead and
Yeah.
see where that leads you, what rabbit hole it takes you down. But yes, I'll go ahead and pass the baton over to you to go ahead and chime in.
So with that, there is those that have that natural curiosity and that natural expansion. There are those that don't, and both are necessary. Um, you cannot have a stable structure if everything is moving, right? And some people are not meant to have spiritual experiences until they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s. They're not meant to be open until that time because there are things that they are supposed to do before that may build a life for themselves, that may build a life for others. it is I'm so sick of everybody being like if you don't expand by X amount of time, you're probably never gonna get it and you're gonna be stuck in your ways. No. Spirituality and everything has no expiration date. It really doesn't.
Non-linear.
Oh, it's incredibly nonlinear. You can have people that are open at 2 years old, and you have people that are open at 89. It doesn't matter. Um, you have people that never open in this particular lifetime because they're not supposed to. They're having an experience as themselves and they are fully realizing themselves in this life versus themselves in relation to. You know what I mean?
Or even if they are meant to, there's shit that gets in the way. External influences. Something that traumatizes the shit out of them. They're like, yeah, screw this. I'm not dealing with this. And they just happen to keep the door shut for whatever reason and not necessarily have any intrigue or interest in it, what and all that sort of thing, or shy away from it
Or a
because
lot of
of a
times,
negative experience.
or a lot of
Or,
times they fall into dogma.
yeah,
Like I will say I have um like a great aunt. She never married. She lives like a nun. Like she's got creepy ass dolls around her house. Oh my god. But she had spiritual experiences. You can tell. You could tell just by talking to her between her and my other great aunt. But she fell very much into dogma instead of experiencing what was there, which I understand because that side of the family very much fell into oh my gosh, what is the one that speaks in tongues?
Pentecostal in terms of a
Yeah.
different Christian. So just to go ahead and generally clarify for those out there, there's many different Christian denominations and all that sort of thing. There's Orthodox Christianity, there's Catholicism, then there's also Protestantism. If you want to talk about like three major categories, one of those within the Protestant sort of category is called Pentecostal, amongst
Mm-hmm.
other ones such as Lutherans and Baptists and all that, but Pentecost, in terms of Christian lore and what have you, is an event that after the ascension of Jesus Christ, right, from the earthly plane after he rose again and he instructed his apostles a little more so, they were like, oh crap, Jesus is gone. What do we do? Oh, they're out to get us, the Romans. What are we going to do? And they're all huddled up in this damn house. And lo and behold, they go ahead and, they have this manner of, oh, well, you know what? Here's the Holy Spirit descending upon you guys. And pretty much being of a divine inspiration and blessing from on high. And with that, they're given a manner of gnosis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, for those who don't know, that's, uh, pretty much gnosis, knowledge, knowing, all that sort of thing. A particular topic that both Devi and I, in different degrees, have covered previously on the channel. But they were given that manner of gnosis, and symbolically, that's like with uh, tongues covered in flames above their heads. And with that, they are able to go ahead and speak in various languages and tongues and be able to go ahead and have more so a broader base of knowledge than they did beforehand, being divinely inspired. And then we're able to go out and preach the message of the Christian gospels and of Jesus Christ and all that sort of thing. And that is one of the particular events and instances that, you know, is seen as one of like one of the bases of people going out and being missionaries, and hence the rapid growth of the Christian church since its outset and
Mm-hmm.
beginnings. But yes, that is what the Pentecostal sect and manner of Protestantism focuses heavily upon, is that particular event in of itself,
Mm-hmm.
and that being their core basis of things that they go ahead and their particular set of teachings follows.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so they're very much into that. Like my great grandmother was a Pentecostal preacher, um, like very heavily into that. So even through spiritual experiences, and I truly do believe that um, Pentecostal Christianity is one of those sects of Christian mysticism, but they don't really talk about it that way. Um, but that really, like, that's where it falls to me, in my opinion.
Oh
Um,
yes, yes.
but we got way off topic with the eclipse
Not,
stuff.
nec- not, not, nec- not necessarily. Just talking about generally, like, in terms of looking at fictional representations of eclipses, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
series of heroes that, this event marked, or sparked in the series, people being more so supernaturally or spiritually attuned and getting more so superpowers, different abilities, all that sort of thing as manifestations of things awakening within them and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. So, yeah, it's still interrelated. But going ahead and continuing, now this is more so along the lines of like a representation of ancient, sort of, ancient civilization and the fall of it, you can say, or you can say a precursor to the fall of it. And for those who have not necessarily gone ahead and seen it, it's a film called Apocalypto. Now, funny enough, we went ahead and just talked about, things of Christian nature. And, the person who went ahead and directed the film is Mel Gibson, who, if you are not familiar with him as an actor, happens to be very heavily and particularly Christian. And with that, he directed the film Apocalypto, and what it is about is, I believe, is either the Mayan or the Aztec civilization, right? Or particular individuals that were a part of this region in Central South America. And I do not have a synopsis in front of me, but I'm just giving a very crude sort of gist. And with that, right, it goes ahead and documents, like, this particular village and tribe becoming enslaved by the sort of greater sort of civilization, right? And they're brought over to one of the major cities, and like, people who are, like, enslaved are pretty much going to have being sacrificed unto the gods to try to, gain their favor, get their pleasure on top of this big sort of a pyramid, what have you, or ziggurat, I believe, is the proper terminology for a, non-triangular pyramid. And pretty much, when it comes to the main character being on top of this, ziggurat and, the stone altar right there, pretty much them ready to go ahead and cut his heart out and all that, there happens to be a total solar eclipse right there. And they see that as a sign of the gods actually being appeased with their sacrifices and all of that, not necessarily having any foreknowledge that this event was occurring, just by, whatever means of ignorance that they had in regards to it, in regards to the plot. But I'm gonna take a guess that within Central American, Southern American, Aztec, and or Mayan cultures, that they did have, particular stories and mythoses in relation to that. But we haven't necessarily prepared that sort of information at present. So look it up and research if you're interested. But yes, so they stop, these sacrifices, don't kill the main character, and they're just like, all right, so since we're not using for sacrifice, what are we gonna do? Oh, well, we're gonna go ahead and let them go free. Oh, wait, there's a caveat. Sure, we're gonna give you a chance to run away and be free. We're gonna go shoot some fucking arrows at you because we're gonna use you as target practice since we don't need to use you as sacrifice anymore. So lo and behold, uh, through the whatever you want to say, luck or coincidence or maybe fate or what have you, the main character is able to get away from those who are, shooting at him and fellow tribesmen as sport, right? And eventually he's able to go ahead and get away from most of them, but then he's like at a cliffside with a couple of them left on him, and he's like, oh shit, this is the end. But lo and behold, since it's a cliffside next to the sea, what do they happen to go and see? They happen to go ahead and see some ships coming in, right? And with this sort of occurrence, the two guys who are chasing them, they want to go report the shit back, and like, oh, we see some ships and all that. Not every day they go ahead and see anything of that nature coming in from the sea. And lo and behold, who does this happen to be? The Spanish conquistadors. And for those who are informed as to historical events, yeah, the Spanish conquistadors, they came and they say that they went ahead and through various means, intentional and not necessarily intentional, went ahead and eradicated many of the Aztec and Mayan peoples and just like, any sort of indigenous folks in the area, what have you. So you can say that that solar eclipse in the film very directly preceded the arrival of conquistadors, and thus going ahead and ushering in the demise of their own civilization, what have you. So, just talking about Apocalypto as a film, that fictional representation, and or Central and South American, interpretations of that. What about you, Debbie? What do you got to think on that?
No, my thoughts of that are very much Ouroboros. It signified the end of an era. It signified that that was the end. Um, Even though it hadn't necessarily, the dominoes hadn't necessarily fallen yet. And that I think is a very potent and powerful um, indication, because the conquistadors didn't just conquer them in a day. It didn't happen in a day. It happened over time. But technically, the end was the moment that they stepped foot on land.
Oh yes. So pretty much just like, yeah, that just being another fictional representation in the modern day that you can go ahead and watch for your entertainment. It's a pretty damn good movie, and I would say that all the series and things that have been mentioned thus far are pretty good watches, and all of that in their various formats. But last thing I want to go ahead and mention, at least in terms of media and all that is, I'm sure there are plenty of folks out there who remember the song "Black Hole Sun" by Soundgarden, and that you can say being indicative and in relation to solar eclipses and all of that. Um, as the lyrics happen to go now, Debbie, I know that this is one of your favorite songs, so by all means, take this one away for sure.
No, it is not. What the hell are you talking
No, no,
about?
it's not one of your favorite songs. No,
No.
not at all.
What are
No,
you talking
no.
about? Like, I know the lyrics to the the chorus, but like "Black Hole Sun, won't you come and wash away the pain?" Um like I obviously um but no, I have never indicated that that was my favorite song ever in any way, shape, or form. You
I
pulled that
said,
out of your
I said,
ass.
I said one of, one of.
No, sir, you lying.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
But yes, in any case, so yes, that is a song that in relation to, I guess you want to go ahead and add it to a playlist or something. If you're trying to get Eclipse sort of related or themed music or anything like that, um, go ahead and check it out. Pretty good damn song in of itself, regardless of whether it relates to the eclipse or not. But yeah, now granted, there's other interpretations if you want to look at it from a spiritual, magical, paranormal lens of the song. Not necessarily that's just eclipse based, more so of the black sun and all that sort of stuff that is a part of occult mythos and all that. But you know, once again, that is to go further into that. By all means, research at your own inspiration and/or discretion and all that sort of thing. But yes, in regard to solar eclipses, and I think we covered quite a bit of the general gamut and all of that. But once again, personal anecdotes, personal thoughts in relation to the upcoming solar eclipse and all that. What exactly is your stance and advisement in terms of a conclusion to this particular dialogue?
In conclusion to this, like I've said many times, I am not participating in it. I am going to stay inside. Um, in terms of those that are spiritually inclined, energy work inclined, I'm going to advise put up a barrier. Put up a barrier for yourself. Um, like don't there is something negative there. I don't trust it. I don't like it, and I'm going to advise protect yourself, protect your loved ones, that kind of thing.
Yes, yes. As for myself, once again, as I stated before, I got inclinations that while I have been more so caught up in the hype train of wrestling and the resurgence of that, and as much as I am a fan of basketball as well, not to participate or partake in any sort of events of that nature on the day of the eclipse or proceeding leading up to it. And going ahead and, if you have a DVR and means to go ahead and watch it later on afterwards, like, maybe a day or a few days afterwards, by all means, go ahead. I think it's pretty much safe after that point. But, just in respect to the omens, in respect to not just my own personal inclinations or Debbie's personal inclinations, but just what previous cultures have stated beforehand, right? Not necessarily observing anything of that sort of nature, and whether it be outside like physical phenomenon of the eclipse or major events and what have you. It's a time of reflection, a time of staying in and just going ahead and allowing for things to go ahead and do as they will. The passing of the old to allow for the new. The snake going ahead and eating its own tail, the Ouroboros, Leviathan, all these sorts of different things. And for those who are more so Abrahamic and or Christian inclined, I will go ahead and leave off the note that there is speculation in regards to the whole idea of the apocalypse and revelation and all that sort of thing, which I do not have any particular verses on hand, but that is something that you can go ahead and look into yourself, um, and what have you. But yes, so lo and behold, I think that when it comes to that sort of thing, stay inside and cover up the windows and to whatever extent, and make sure that you can keep everything not exposed. And I don't know, read a book or something. You know, read a book. Go ahead and just do something that is more so in respect and honor to not only the eclipse but yourself, and disconnect for a day. You know, disconnect.
Sounds good to me.
And yes, I guess we can go ahead and leave it at that. So yes. With that said, this is Twisted, and
Devi,
yes, with Open Sorcery, and we'll see you guys next time and all that. Stay frosty, Neguses. Peace.
have a good one, y'all.